Hi, it's Hans at ahappierman.com. Today's topic is financial tracking. Well, it's kind of late March as I'm speaking. I'm going over my old stomping grounds. I've got a chiropractor appointment, and then I'm going to see my daughter afterwards for dinner. So kind of a nice late afternoon evening for me. And one of the things I wanted to talk to her about was financial tracking, because she just recently started a pretty good job. She's kind of, I think, on her way to a good career. And when you're a young person or any age person making money, you should spend some of your effort on the tracking of your finances, so you can watch hopefully the growth of your savings and investments versus the decrease of your debts, so you can increase your net worth, so you provide a measure of security for yourself, because it always feels good to have a bunch of money in the bank and a bunch of growing investments and minimal debts. And so that's what I'm suggesting to you. Now, when I started work back in about 1990, a long time ago, I got a good job working for a big city government as an engineer. And I went from a very, very broke and struggling college student who was always broke, to having a good income and starting to make something for myself. Quickly, when I started work, I was quickly started to build my bank accounts. I had various savings accounts. I was kind of diversified in a variety of ways that made sense back in those days. Mutual funds, some stocks and bonds, some employer-sponsored accounts, and some other things. And I was tracking those things, enjoying as it went up. Now, back in the 90s, there was no computers, so you had to do all this tracking kind of by hand on a piece of paper. So it was kind of a pain in the you-know-what, because it was hard to get the information quickly. Like your bank, you probably have to go to the bank to ask them how much money is in there, for example. And then the mutual funds and the stocks and the bonds, they'd mail you a report on where you're at every month, or sometimes 4 times quarterly, sometimes twice a year, right? So you never really know where. In those days, I never really knew exactly where I'm at, because the information of it was so hard to obtain, which is very nice nowadays. The information is not hard to obtain. All my various savings accounts and investments are online, and I have one that's kind of a pain to get, but it's just an 800 number, and they spit out the number, when they know me, it's automated. So it's not that hard to get your debts. They're not that hard to get a hold of either, because it's all online. The information is there. So I just have a simple spreadsheet keeping track of the debts, another spreadsheet keeping track of the investments, and a third just subtracting the debts from the investments to see what my net worth is. So it's motivating. It helps to keep me going. I have other columns on the investment savings one about what I'd like to be, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that kind of thing. And that's really about it. I don't believe in overcomplicating anything. This shouldn't be a big effort. Now, this is almost the end of March, so tomorrow's the last day. So tomorrow I will do all that. I'll spend a half hour gathering that information, put it into the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet does the math for you, and it's just a matter of typing in a few numbers, looking them up and typing them in. It's not difficult. And that's what I'm going to talk to my daughter about today. Make sure she is doing that. I know she keeps track of herself, of her money in paper form and maybe other forms. She's pretty good at making money, very responsible young lady. But I might just email her my spreadsheet, and that might simplify things for her. Why, instead of always having to recreate the wheel, just do what somebody else does. Now, I know there's probably all kinds of online tracking mechanisms, but it's really not that complicated, right? It shouldn't be that complicated. The other thing is, with your net worth, what if you own houses? What if you own lots of different things? What do you do about all the value on your house, the value on your car, the value on this, the value on that? You've got expensive jewelry or collections. Well, I think it's just simpler to keep track of the money, right? The other things, your equity in real estate, how much your vehicles, your collections. Yeah, that's all nice, but at the end of the day, money, easily accessible money, is the best thing, the easiest to track. So give that idea some thought. Hey, one more thing on this before I turn this off. Like I said, I started doing this back in the early 90s, and I had a good job. I was making money. I was getting myself together. I didn't have too many debts at that time. I had a kind of a modest student loan, compared to what some kids have nowadays. And when I first started working, I didn't have a car loan. That came a little bit later. So keeping track of my debts was not a very big deal. But then, kind of the mid-90s, got engaged, bought a house, got married, had a baby, and with all of that, my financial situation went from pretty good to horrible in a shambles, right? I went from hardly having any debts to massive debts of all kinds of different debts. And I went from a bunch of different savings and investment accounts to none of that. So for decades, I did not keep track of my finances for decades, because in my mind at the time, it's like there's no point in making myself even more miserable than I am. I know my finances are a shambles. I know I have a hard time paying my bills. I know I'm not saving any money. Throughout the marriage and the years after the divorce, there was no hope for me financially. And I just had to climb out of that horrible financial mess to get myself on firmer footing. So, looking back at all that situation now, thinking about if you, as a happier man, think that being in control of your financial life is important, you would track it. You would track your financial life like it is extremely important, and if it started to fall apart, if it starts to get worse over time, you would take action to make an improvement, right? So my inattention to this matter contributed to a financial disaster for me. Now, I rationalized all that, with the wife and the situation and why I didn't do it. I talk about that in my book, Leave Your Wife, Become a Happier Man with a 3-Step System, available on the ahappierman.com website. But I think it would be good for you as a man to keep track of your finances when you're single and when you're married. when you're married and you have children, your finances are even more important than when you're single. The caring for your children takes an enormous amount of money, and you should be tracking that carefully and making adjustments. And the adjustment that I could have made was to divorce my wife earlier in life, when I knew that this situation with her would not improve. But that's a whole different story. I'm just suggesting that tracking your finances, just like tracking any other important thing in your life, is critical. It's critical to your happiness. It's critical to your long-term abundance. It's critical to your short-term peace of mind. So give that idea some thought. All for now.